Gundam. It's a strange, made-up word, but somehow you probably know exactly what it means. For over 40 years at this point, the word Gundam is synonymous with giant robots. When the original show aired in 1979, I don't believe anyone on the team would have thought this janky mecha show would turn out to be a cornerstone of not only science fiction but also nerd culture and anime almost half a century later. While the franchise continues to hold up against the test of time, the same could not be said of its creators. Two mainstays of the franchise, original series director Yoshiyuki Tomino and original animation lead Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, are likely to retire after finishing their final Gundam projects this year. Tomino's current health condition might mean that the G-Reco movies coming out late 2022 are likely his last, while Yasuhiko himself has already delayed his retirement in 2018 to work on the Kukuru's Doan's Island movie, which depending on when you're watching this video should be out by now. With both men projected to leave the franchise soon, I feel like it's only fair to me to give back something in return. So, join me and let's roll back time to take a look where all of this started. Mobile Suit Gundam. Way back in the day, the mecha anime genre was a completely different beast. Tomino remarked that most robot shows he worked on at the time featured aliens as antagonists and humans as good guys. He wanted to change all of that. Tomino specifically wanted to tell a different kind of mecha story, where giant robots weren't superpowered machines meant to defeat cartoon villains but as weapons of war made by men to kill other men. While definitely interesting on paper, there was a problem with this idea. Anime is expensive to make. Because of this, sponsorships, merchandising, and toy sales are often necessary to keep it in production. This caused a lot of friction between Tomino, Sunrise, which is the studio that Tomino works with, and the sponsors interested in the project. Sunrise and its toy company sponsors wanted to sell toys based on the show to kids, but Tomino wanted to tell a more mature, gritty, and grim story. Compromises were made on both sides to try and get the project up and running, but not even all these compromises could save the show from the pitfall it was doomed to run into. Tomino got his mature story about war and its horrors, and Sunrise got the colorful robots that it wanted to license as toys. These two aspects did not mesh well. The kids that the toys were marketed for didn't want to watch the show, and the teens who did watch the show didn't want to buy the toys. So surprisingly enough, this iconic science fiction franchise started out as a major dud. It didn't help that the previously mentioned animation lead, Yasuhiko, fell seriously ill midway through production and couldn't work for a very long time, which predictably caused animation quality to suffer. The combination of these factors caused the franchise to fall into a disastrous tailspin, and it wasn't until Bandai stepped in and bought the toy license to the franchise that things started turning around. Bandai recognized that the people who were interested in watching Gundam were also the same people that bought the model kits they sold. The Japanese toy company saw a massive opportunity they could capitalize on, and by God did they capitalize on it. Interest in the Gundam franchise skyrocketed, and Gundam, for all intents and purposes, was safe. The franchise's second win proved that Tomino's idea for more mature, gritty, and darker mecha stories had some very real merit. The franchise directly spawned other mecha shows that followed Gundam's more realistic depiction of robots, giving birth to the real robot subgenre of anime. This essentially created a split in the larger mecha genre, with super robots being the more fantastical mecha anime and real robots being the more grounded and realistic side of things. With the newfound popularity and sponsorships from Bandai, Tomino sought to introduce fixes and rewrites to the franchise, as in hindsight, he saw that there was a lot of room for improvements. This ended up creating the Gundam compilation movies, which condensed the show's 43 episodes into 3 separate 2-hour movies. The compilation movies were a lean and streamlined retelling of the original story, and saw many of the more outlandish elements of the anime replaced with more realistic elements. For example, the giant flail that the Gundam wields in the show was removed altogether, and there isn't a single scene where the Gundam's different modules combine mid-air. Additionally, the animation errors caused by animation lead Yasuhiko's absence were also fixed, making for a less jarring watching experience. While a handful of story arcs had to be removed to accommodate the shorter total runtime, the most important general story bits weren't cut out. Now, I will be basing my retrospective/review/analysis video on the compilation movies and not the original series. Why? See, I've got a few reasons, but this is the most important one. I kind of want this video, or at least the first part of this series, done before the time the Kukuru's Doan's Island movie premieres. Because of this, talking about 3 movies, each 2 hours long, is a lot more manageable than 43 episodes of an entire show. Additionally, I'll be mostly basing my talks on the movie itself, but it's important to remember that the Gundam franchise has been running for over 40 years at this point. I'll be citing expanded universe lore or subsequent entries in the franchise where I have to. After all, this video isn't just a look at the original Gundam, but also a retrospective after 40 odd years of development, new entries, retcons, and all that good stuff. We're also going to have to consider how new additions to the franchise affects old entries as well, after all. Finally, if the footage on screen looks a bit iffy or miscolored at times, 30% odds I've either fucked something up or 70% odds it's intentional on my end. Firstly, I can't load the goddamn movie into Vegas Pro, so I'm learning a new editor on the fly for this project. Hopefully it won't be as much, but some jankiness should be expected. Secondly, I'm putting in a lot of work on this video, so I'm not keen on letting it get copy striked. On occasion, I'll be using stills, color-edited footage, or I'll have random gameplay in the background. Also, I feel like this should go without saying, but I'm basically going to spoil the entire movie. If you don't want to be spoiled, I have no clue why you're watching a retrospective video that's going to talk about the entire damn thing. It's on Netflix if you're still subbed to it, or if you're lucky enough, it might be one of those special occasions where the official Gundam Info channel has it available to the public. With all that background and preamble out of the way, we can finally get to the meat of things and start with the first of the 3 compilation movies, simply called Mobile Suit Gundam. The movie starts by establishing the world we're setting into. Gone is the year of our Lord Anno Domini, for now humanity lives in the age of the Universal Century. This is what we call the timeline that the original Gundam story and all its subsequent sequels exist in. This is a time in which mankind is born, grows old, and even dies among the stars. Due to ecological disasters and resource scarcity, much of the population has immigrated or even outright expelled into living in giant tube colonies in space. However, the Earth Federation, just like the UN of our reality, is ran by absolute dicks. This causes unrest amongst the space colonists, Spacenoids as they're called in universe, which unsurprisingly starts a war between the Earth Federation and the more rebellious colonies. And so in the year 0079 of the Universal Century, the most disastrous war in human history begins, the 1-Year War. A group of colonies in the colony cluster called Side 3 declared its independence, renames itself into the Principality of Zeon, and marches to war. Unfortunately for the Federation, Zeon is led by the ignoble and corrupt Zabi family. Under the Zabi's leadership, Zeon casually deploys weapons of mass destruction during the opening weeks of the war. Predictably enough, the Federation responds in kind. This leads to a massive loss of life. Estimated casualty counts are in the billions. It's the single bloodiest war in human history, and it's only lasted a few short months. Now, some commentary here. While everything I've described earlier is canon and does happen in universe, little of it is actually mentioned in the intro narration. A lot of its lore is either established in sequels or in expanded universe materials, so at this moment, while we the audience are made aware that the war is indeed horrible, our image to the extent of it is still kind of hazy. Personally, I think if they invested a bit more into the intro, I think they could have gotten a better established universe sooner, but as it stands, the hook does its job. Back to the movie, now the story begins proper. A squad of mobile suits, which is what they call mechs in universe, move in on a seemingly unsuspecting colony. These are Zaku 2s, which are supposed to be the most advanced mobile suits that the Principality of Zeon fields. These are the ones that have fought the numerically superior Federation Space Force into a standstill, so their reputation as a menace is already established. As the squad of Zakus infiltrate the colony, it's revealed that the colony is already in high alert. Even though the Zakus have managed to enter without causing alarm, sirens are blaring in the background. One of the Zaku pilots suggests that it's simply because everyone's at work, but looks can be deceiving. We are then introduced to Amuro, who is the main character of this story. The introduction shows us that Amuro tends to be wrapped up in his own world, more concerned with tinkering with his machines than everything else happening outside. So he's completely oblivious to the fact that a Federation warship is docking in the colony, and that the residents are ordered to evacuate into shelters. We're then told through a conversation between him and his friend that Amuro doesn't have the best relationship with his dad, citing that his dad's job as a military researcher means that he has to live alone most of the time. As Amuro and his friend, Fra, speeds toward the evacuation center, we cut to the Federation HQ on the colony, which is currently trying to transport the Gundam into the colony's space dock. They've detected the Zeon warship that deployed the Zaku squads, but they're flying blind and have no clue what the Zeeks are doing. Later on in the series, and in more expanded universe materials, it's established that this is due to the interference of Minovsky particles, which is a byproduct of the Minovsky fusion reactor. These generators are extremely powerful, but release particles which mess with long-range sensors and communications. This is the in-universe explanation for why Zeon and the Federation still engage in World War II-style naval engagements so far into the future. So because of these Minovsky particles, both the Zeon warship and the Federation forces in the colony have only a vague idea of what the fuck the other side is doing. Cut now to the inside of the Federation warship, called the White Base, where we learn that Amuro's dad is indeed involved in the Gundam project. Amuro's dad believes that the Gundams are a true game changer, that once they enter mass production, the war will be all but over. His dialogue with Bright, who is a fresh-faced junior officer on the ship, suggests that he's doing this so that kids like Amuro would never have to be sent to the front line. But it doesn't really go anywhere after this for reasons you'll soon find out. Later on, Amuro's dad and Bright enter the bridge where they meet with the ship's commander. They talk about how the White Base wasn't able to shake the Zeon warship tailing them, but decide to proceed with business as usual. What they're doing here is extremely important, so they have no time to dawdle. As the White Base begins docking inside the colony, the Zeke scouts have discovered what all the commotion is about. The Federation is developing advanced mobile suits, and this is going to be a major problem for Zeon's long-term war plans. The scouts now come to a disagreement. The scout lead wants to retreat and report their findings, but Jean here wants to take the initiative and destroy the Fedi mobile suits now. When the calmer scout chastises him, he simply says, "This is what Lieutenant Char would have done." Char. Lieutenant Char. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you're pretty into nerd culture in general. In that case, I'm pretty confident that even if you haven't watched any Gundam show before, you're probably already well acquainted with Char's character archetype. The sly, mysterious dude acting as a rival to one of our heroes, who may or may not have agendas of their own, often standing out as superior to their own peers. Char may not be the first character of this type, but he sure as hell made it explode in popularity. There's a reason why the archetype was formalized as the Char clone and not after someone else. Char hasn't even shown up on screen yet, but he's already heavily influenced the tides of the plot. That's how big of a deal this dude is. But let's get further into that later, so let's get back to the story. So Apple-Bottom Jean goes ham on the Fedi facility, destroying several units and generally causing havoc inside the colony. Amuro, inside his shelter, somehow figures out that something is amiss. He quickly deduces that an assault is going on and gets the inkling that their shelters aren't going to be enough. He takes the initiative, leaving the shelter to find his dad so that he can get the civvies to evacuate into the white base. Outside, he comes face to face with a Zaku that's running amok. This is probably one of the earliest examples of scenes I personally think convince just how good mobile suits are in universe. They're armored, fast, and they have some serious firepower. Despite the dated animation, you can tell that the Zaku is a force to be reckoned with. It'll outrun anything that it can't outgun, and it'll outgun anything that it can't chase down. The damn thing is dodging wire-guided missiles, for God's sake. One of said missiles slams into a Fedi warehouse. The explosion rips the structure apart, which messes the hell out of its contents. Crates are scattered about, and by sheer coincidence, the crate containing the Gundam's operating manual just happens to land right in front of Amuro. Amuro watches in horror and tries to run away, but then he notices the previous book that landed in front of him, and like the fucking nerd that he is, decides to read it instead of running for cover. Now we cut to the Zeon warship. It turns out that one of the Zakus retreated and reported their findings. We're greeted by this man, wearing ceremonial uniform in the middle of a combat mission. That's some serious balls. This is Char, the officer that inspired Jean to go ham on the Fedi base. He oozes confidence, style, and even cunning. Anyway, Char thinks he might have to investigate the situation himself since his underlings couldn't handle it. Cut back to Amuro, and he's still being a fucking nerd. He's reading the Gundam manual while everyone else is fleeing for their lives. His friend Fra has to pull him up to get him to evacuate to the white base. In the middle of it, he spots his dad trying to get the Gundam loaded up into the Fedi warship ahead of the civvies. Amuro gets mad at his dad for it, but his dad just calmly tells Amuro to shut his mouth and evacuate to the white base. Now the kid's a bit shocked at this, and he's standing around trying to process what the hell is going on. Fra spots him and tries to call him back to the evac column, but a stray Zaku shot lands right behind her. Yeah, they're dead. They're super fucking dead. Fra's parents too, Jesus. It's a little under 13 minutes and they're already laying it on hard. Amuro gives a little bit of encouragement to Fra, tell her that she has to make it to the port and evac, while he himself, he has a score to settle. That's right, this 15-ish-year-old boy decides to steal an experimental war machine to play hero. Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine though. I'm sure it isn't going to end up biting him in the ass and giving him severe post-traumatic stress disorder for years after this whole thing settles down. Right? Yeah, anyways, Grand Theft Amuro is able to boot up the Gundam thanks to the operation manual that conveniently landed near him, but things still aren't going well. The Zaku notices the Gundam still on the transport bed and tries to destroy it. Amuro, realizing what's going on, panics and fires a burst from one of Gundam's Vulcan guns, which misses. But hey, it's a thought that counts, right? Jean takes a step back, but then realizes the Gundam's having trouble getting up, so he fires a bunch of shots at it expecting to finish the job. Except it doesn't work. The Gundam is made out of sterner stuff, as it turns out. Chief Denim here tries to get Jean to withdraw, but wait a minute, holy shit, is the Zaku team literally named after pants? Jesus, I knew Gundam naming conventions are pretty weird, but man, that's actually pretty funny. I can't believe I never caught this until now. Back to the point, Chief Denim tries to get his men to withdraw, but Jean keeps pushing it. The both of them argue about it for a bit, but are stopped dead in their tracks as Amuro finally gets the Gundam to stand up. But the kid runs into another issue. He just used up all the ammo on his Vulcan guns and he has no clue what else to do. Seeing no other options, the kid resorts to good old fisticuffs. Surprisingly enough, it kind of works.
あれが連邦軍のモビルスーツの威力なのか
Both the Zakus finally try to withdraw, but Amuro is running on instinct now. He finds out that the Gundam has built-in laser swords. Beam sabers is what they're called in universe. So he whips out one and cuts Jean as he retreats, which blows up the fucking suit and the floor under him. Amuro's dad, who is caught in the blast, gets sucked out into space. And the most hilarious part of this is that Amuro doesn't even know about this. My bad, did I say hilarious? I meant depressing. Amuro takes out the final Zaku by stabbing the cockpit to try and avoid another massive detonation. Remember this detail because it'll be brought up again in the future, maybe once or twice in all the other Universal Century series. And no, my memory about it is pretty hazy. Grunt suits tend to be made out of explodium in the early Gundam shows. And that about wraps up the first ever on-screen mobile suit fight in the entire franchise. The Gundam clunkily trying to beat up the others while the Zaku's get surprised by how powerful the Fetty's new mobile suit is before getting their teeth kicked in. Pretty fun, but the dated animation quality definitely let it down a bit. Now, unfortunately for the Fetties, just because the Zaku's are destroyed doesn't mean the Zeon have given up their operation. Now they're bombarding the colony with their warship and it's tearing the whole colony apart. The captain of the White Base was critically injured during this time, forcing Bright to step up as overall commander of the warship. To say that he was taking command of an absolute shitfest would be an understatement. Most of the mobile suit engineers died in the Zaku attack, and a significant portion of the crew got caught in the Zeon warship's barrage. They have to get out of the colony, and they have to do it as soon as possible. Over on the Zeon warship, it's not all sunshine and happy days either. They might have figured out what the Fetty's Operation D was, but they lost 2 Zaku's along the way and they didn't even destroy the Gundam. Admiral Dozel, who seems to be the big man in charge of the op, quite literally, isn't quite enthused about losing mobile suits in what's supposed to be a milk run. Nonetheless, he agrees to send reinforcements. While waiting for said reinforcements, another Zeon team personally led by Char will infiltrate the colony on foot. As the Fetties scramble to get the White Base out of Side 7, Bright asks the injured commander what to do with Amuro. The commander reluctantly orders Bright to arm the Gundam with a beam rifle, even though he wishes he didn't have to. After this, Amuro is ordered to destroy the damaged Gundam units caught in the initial Zeon attack. No loose ends after all. No way in hell are the Fetties going to let the Zeeks make their own Gundams. Speaking of no loose ends, Char is busy taking pictures of one of the busted Gundam units when a medical volunteer named Sayla apprehends him. Char is most definitely caught off guard, but the two somehow recognize each other. The Zeon officer uses the moment of confusion to get the upper hand on Sayla, but is quickly driven off when Amuro shows up to destroy the remains of the busted unit. Or so they think. Char didn't run away, he hid. Then when the Gundam retreated to the White Base, he followed and managed to snap more photos. Though fortunately, out of the hundreds of bullets shot at him, one managed to hit the camera. Having failed to complete their mission, Char and his fire team retreat to the warship. Alright, now let's talk about Char for a moment. He's only been on screen for a while and he's already a certified badass. He's not just cunning, but he's incredibly skilled. There's a reason why Admiral Dozel trusted Char with this extremely important mission, and had his men not gone off their rockers, the situation might not have devolved to this point. Additionally, we had a pretty good scene with a good show-don't-tell moment. While other characters have mentioned and hyped up Char previously, seeing him in action shows that he's the real deal. Doubly so when they amp up his menace later on. We cut to the White Base leaving the colony. They know damn well they're going to have to punch their way out of this mess. As the White Base exits the dock, Amuro zooms ahead and he spots the Zeon fire team still out in the open, retreating towards their warship. He takes aim and tries to take them out, but he panics. The thought of actually killing people stresses him. The Zaku's, they were faceless. They were just machines. Something he had to stop, but Char and his fire team? They're people. And Amuro realizes that he's going to have to kill people when he pilots the Gundam. And predictably, this is very, very upsetting. Honestly, this shouldn't be surprising. Amuro's still a kid, a teenager at that. He's bound to be quite emotional about these things. In fact, almost anyone would be traumatized when it comes to killing other people. As the White Base weathers an assault from the Zeon warship, the Censors officer delivers a harrowing report. A single Zaku is headed right for them. But it's not just any Zaku, it's one traveling at 3 times the speed a regular Zaku should. This causes the injured commander to panic. Only one Zaku could fly 3 times faster than normal. The Red Comet of Loom. The man who single-handedly destroyed multiple battleships with just his mobile suit. Char Aznable. We've seen before that Char is a cunning soldier, but now we see the man in his element. To say that Amuro fought Char is an overstatement. This wasn't a fight, this was one side flailing about trying to hit the other and failing miserably. Throughout this entire scuffle, the Gundam can't land a single hit on Char's custom Zaku 2. It gets to the point where the man is practically styling on the kid. The random mook that backs up Char? Yeah, he gets schwacked quickly. The main man himself? Nah, mate, in your dreams. However, despite all of this, one thing stopped Char from utterly wiping out the Gundam in this fight. It's the fact that his gun isn't even scratching the damn thing.
Oda.
So now we have a situation where Char can't damage the Gundam, but the Gundam can't lay a finger on Char. This goes about as you expect. After both sides exhaust their ammo, they both retreat to their respective warships. For the Zeeks, a worst-case scenario has finally arrived on their doorstep. The Federation hasn't just developed mobile suits for itself, they've developed mobile suits that, in the right hands, will wipe the floor with whatever Zeon has in its arsenal. The Gundam is a total game changer, and the Fedis intend on mass-producing it. But that is all theoretical right now. The Gundam still has to make it to Earth, where Fedi engineers can get their hands on it. Right now, we cut back to the White Base, where Bright is ragging on Amuro for not using the Gundam to its full potential. Now, the kid doesn't take this too kindly, as expected, but Bright puts his foot down. Nobody else can pilot the Gundam, so like it or not, Amuro is in charge of not just running the Gundam, but also protecting the White Base. To do that properly, he needs to get better at piloting the damn thing. This is a fantastic bit of storytelling and character conflict. Bright's being realistic and pragmatic. Nobody else but Amuro can pilot the Gundam effectively. He needs the kid to learn on the fly and get better, because if the Gundam fails, not only is the White Base fucked 6 ways through Sunday, but also the rest of the Federation. Keep in mind, Bright is a junior officer at this point, and expanded lore says he's only 19 years old. The entire war effort is resting on the ability of a 19-year-old to keep a 15 or 16-year-old on track in piloting the most advanced war machine then known to man. Nothing like the weight of the entire world to keep you going, huh? On the other hand, Amuro has his own problems. He was conscripted against his own will, basically, ordered to fight and kill, and told if he didn't want to, he can go back to the colony that just got ripped apart because the White Base has no room for slackers. You put yourself in his shoes a bit, there's no way in hell you're gonna take that kindly. This scene right here plants the seeds for Amuro's greater story arc, as well as sets up an extremely important question that you'll get to ask yourself in all subsequent Gundam media. But I'll get back to this one later. Now, this exchange also highlights something I really like about Tomino's writing in the early Gundam shows. Now, it mightn't be the most subtle or cleverly written, but people in his stories act and react realistically. Amuro and later on Camille, Judo, Hathaway, Seabook, and Uso all act like kids who got caught up in things way over their head, because they are kids that got caught up in things way over their head. Bright is also consistently grounded and realistic in all his subsequent appearances, where he learns and builds up from his previous experience. The same goes for a lot of the characters that Tomino writes. Now, they're not the best. Hell, a lot of them can be downright annoying at times, but it'd be stranger if they weren't, because that's exactly what you or me or anyone else would be like, put in the same circumstances. Back to the story. The White Base is now approaching an asteroid called Luna 2. This used to be a mining asteroid, its materials harvested to build new colonies. Now it serves as a Fedi military base close to Zeon-held space. The civvies in the ship are eager to get there, and can you blame them? Their homes is just ripped apart and they're stuck and packed in a warship that Zeon desperately wants to destroy. I imagine it'd be quite the stressful environment for just about everyone. Meanwhile, Char's warship is resupplying and replacing its losses. During the resupply, he comments that the supply ship he's linking up with is a very old model, which is our first insight into the true state of Zeon's military. For all their victories, bluster, and bragging, Zeon is actually on the edge. Their mobile suits may have given them a fighting chance against the Federation, but it still cost them a hell of a lot. Zeon's Space Force still takes a major beating when it comes to conventional engagements. They are cutting deep into their reserves, and both sides know this. Zeon needs a quick and decisive victory if they want to come out on top, hence why they dropped a colony on Earth hoping it would scare them into surrendering. On the other hand, the Federation, though battered, bruised, and beaten, knows it has the long-term strategic advantage. Give them enough time and they'll eventually turn the tide of the war. Hell, they've proven that they're already turning the tide of the war as we speak, considering that they've managed to develop the Gundam. Back to Luna 2, the injured commander of the White Base is finally offloaded, but the rest of the refugees aren't. Now, Bright asks that Luna 2 take in the refugees and replace the White Base's civilian crew with more experienced sailors, but the base commander refuses. His crew isn't trained to operate a mobile suit carrier, and as it stands, the ragtag White Base crew actually has more experience running it than any sailor on the asteroid. Retraining the Luna 2 sailors to operate the White Base is going to take time, and that's not on the table since Jaburo, the main Federation HQ on Earth, wants to get their hands on the White Base pronto. So after a quick resupply, the White Base departs for planetfall. Inside the ship, things are very hectic. The Gundam is being repaired and restocked, and all the mobile suit parts that could be saved from Side 7 are being assembled. Everyone's busy, from running maintenance to training in the simulator. Like it or not, the civvies that got swept up in this whole debacle are now in charge of running the warship. Again, it's easy to see why this is an extremely stressful environment. Speaking of stressful environments, the White Base is starting re-entry procedures. Mirai, the rookie ship driver pressed into becoming the warship's helmsman, notes that right now would be the perfect time for Char to attack. Now, some of the other characters optimistically believe that it won't happen, that Char isn't reckless enough to do it. Now, unfortunately for them, Char actually is. The guy's planning a daring attack to try and destroy the ship as it enters the atmosphere, and specifically stresses to his men that any mistake could lead to them getting caught in Earth's gravity well. If that happens, they'll burn up in re-entry and most certainly die. Nobody has ever attempted to do something like this before. Or if they have, none of them have lived to tell the tale. The stage is set for one of the most high-stakes and daring MS fights in the franchise. The second the White Base begins its descent, Char enters the scene. With no other means to fight off the Red Comet, Bright orders Amuro to deploy with the Gundam, who is predictably less than enthused about the situation. He has 4 minutes, count it, 4 minutes to hold off Char and to make it back to the White Base, otherwise he dies and burns up in atmosphere. To make matters worse, it's a 4v1 with the Zeeks holding the advantage. One wrong move and everything falls to shit. Char makes the opening move, firing a barrage of missiles that hits the White Base. Sayla warns Amuro not to get bogged down fighting Char and to cover the White Base and the guiding ship ahead of them. Things take a turn for the worst when Amuro discovers that the Gundam's targeting computer has been miscalibrated. His shots fly wide of the enemy, and this gives the Zaku ample opportunity to hit the guiding ship. Not wanting to abandon their comrades, Bright asks the guide to dock with the White Base. He then asks Amuro to bait away the Zakus while they do it. Unfortunately, Char himself is pinning down the Gundam. Even though Amuro is piloting the superior suit, the skill gap between the two is too vast. Again, Char and his Zaku run rings around the Gundam. But this time the story is different. If Char can pin down the Gundam long enough, he can make sure it gets caught in the gravity well, and that would surely annihilate it. After all, the Gundam can't possibly survive re-entry. Right? Well, Char did his part perfectly. He held off Amuro from landing on the White Base, causing it to get caught in the Earth's gravity well, from which there is no escape. Unfortunately, one of his subordinates, named Crown, is also caught in the gravity well and is burning up on re-entry. But he played an important role in keeping the Gundam pinned, which directly led to the Fedi mobile suit now burning up in atmosphere. His death was not in vain. Or so Char thought. Turns out the Gundam is actually equipped for atmospheric re-entry. So, yeah. Crown he kind of died in vain. Now Char, being the brilliant tactician that he is, actually thought 4 to 5 steps ahead. He wisely considered backup plans in the distinct possibility that his plan failed. His attacks caused the White Base to veer off of its original course to Brazil, causing it to land in the horrible and devastated hellhole that is California. Unfortunately for the White Base and its crew, but fortunate for Char, California is mostly Zeon-held territory. Amuro and the gang escaped one problem and blundered themselves right into another one. I'm sure this can't get any worse than this. And let's talk a bit here, specifically about Char. Now, I know that he's been taking up a lot of our time, but for good reason. He's been a spectacularly written antagonist so far, one that can back up his menacing words with very real force. If he were fighting any other enemy, I can wholeheartedly believe that he'd have won many times over by now. His failings can be attributed entirely to the lack of intel on how powerful the Gundam and the White Base is. He is a supremely competent villain. The best kind of villain. He deserves the reputation he has both in-universe and out of it. Char hits up his old academy buddy who's now in charge of the North American front. Who is this guy? None other than Garma Zabi, the youngest son of Zeon's ruling family. A literal prince of Zeon. Now these two, they are thick as thieves. The way the two converse shows that they respect and trust each other, to the point that Garma is willing to admit his need to impress the rest of his family just blatantly in front of Char. Now, after hearing from his friend, Garma scrambles his air force and makes a move to intercept the White Base. Obviously, this doesn't go unnoticed. Bright orders the crew back into combat standby, but there's a problem. With Amuro, of course. See, the kid's been basically working on the Gundam or piloting the Gundam non-stop since they left Side 7. He's barely had any time to sleep. To make things worse, every time he does try to get some shut-eye, the stress and trauma of running the Gundam catches up with him. The kid doesn't want to pilot the Gundam anymore because of this, and honestly, can you blame him? Things don't slow down just because Amuro wants a break though. The crew receives a transmission from Jaburo. The White Base is ordered to make a break for the sea, so they need all hands on deck to weather the assault and punch through the Zeke defense line. Ryu, or Ryu depending on your pronunciation, who is one of the few White Base crew members to survive Side 7, takes command of the gun tank while Hayato, Amuro's neighbor, is his gunner. Kai, who up to this point is noted as an annoying, cowardly loudmouth, is deployed in the gun cannon. The White Base flies low to avoid Garma and his air force, but walk right into the ground army, which he also deployed. Things are not looking good. Things devolve to the point where Bright leaves the ship's bridge to get Amuro to pilot the Gundam. The kid isn't budging though. In fact, he talks back to the junior officer saying that if Bright wants the Gundam in action so badly, why don't he just go pilot it himself or something? This ticks Bright off, big time. So the dude fucking slaps the kid as a response. This right here, the infamous Bright slap, a staple of the franchise, is born. Now Bright slaps a lot of people in the franchise, but what's curious is that his slapping doesn't actually help. Maybe a bit, but no, mostly no. Amuro getting beat up by Bright just makes him not want to pilot the Gundam even more. What actually convinces Amuro to get in the fucking robot is Bright mentioning that Amuro will always live under Char's shadow if he cowers like this, and then also Fra saying that she'll pilot the damn thing if Amuro won't. Which kind of hits the guy like a bucket of cold water. He's realized that he's the Gundam's custodian now, like it or not. He's kept the White Base safe up to this point, and that through his sacrifice, nobody else has to. When he's at his best, the others don't have to suffer like he does. This is a pretty big breakthrough for his character, but the previous scuffle with Bright also sets up something major down the line for Amuro. With that settled, he finally launches in a Gundam and tears whole ass. It took an ace pilot with a customized Zaku to go toe-to-toe with the Gundam, so the conventional Zeon force of tanks and fighters that Garma brought with him stands no chance at stopping him. Frankly, it's almost cathartic. The kid tears whole ass, ripping apart the incoming tanks and fighters easily and saving the gun cannon and the gun tank. It's an awesome scene where Amuro for the first time fights with all cylinders firing. Hell, he even takes out a Zeon fighter by kicking its cockpit off. The kid's practically styling on the Zeeks at this point. This battle is well and truly where the Gundam earns the name White Devil of the Federation. The only thing that even slowed his crazy rampage was Char deploying to cover Garma's retreat. Evidently, even though Amuro was fighting with all he's got, he's still not a match to Char's veteran experience. After the Zeeks withdraw, the White Base rendezvous with the Fedi supply plane, which also brings updated orders for the crew. We learned that through Lieutenant Matilda, who is in charge of the resupply operation, that General Revel, Commander-in-Chief of all Federation forces, thinks that the White Base is doing spectacularly well for a ship manned by a ragtag crew of fresh-faced officers and civilians pressed into service. She cites that the General thinks they're doing just about as well as the Fedi regulars, which is high praise indeed considering their circumstances. Matilda also notes that the resupply op was done under direct orders from General Revel, and that this is being done despite the Federation being pressed on all sides. She then advises the White Base to make a break for the West Coast, as a supply corridor would be more easily established there. Finally, before leaving, she compliments Amuro at a job well done protecting White Base and its crew, saying that if it weren't for his efforts, her supply plane might have gotten caught in the fighting too. Now this leaves a profound impact on the kid. This is probably the nicest thing a Fedi has ever done for him since they left Side 7, giving him a simple compliment. Damn, I feel you, man. I feel ya. Predictably, Amuro takes a liking to Lieutenant Matilda, to Fra's chagrin. Cut to Char and Garma, they're formulating a new plan of attack. Again, the scene shows that Char and Garma are close friends. Char even says that he'd be more than happy to help his friend take down the White Base. But, alas, that would have to wait. Garma has a party to attend to, filled with two-faced bootlickers and sycophants trying to ingratiate themselves to House Zabi's good graces. Now, neither Garma nor Char likes it, but hey, it's all part of the job. One thing and one thing only makes the whole situation palatable for the Zabi prince, the daughter of the former mayor of LA. The two are engaged in a Romeo and Juliet-style romantic affair, with the ex-mayor disapproving of the relationship and Garma's duties getting in between the two constantly. But there is hope. Garma believes that if he takes down the white base, he'll have enough clout to the point that neither his family nor the ex-mayor can turn them down. And if even that wouldn't work, he was willing to leave Zeon entirely to pursue a relationship. Way to go, man. Go get him. I'm rooting for you. With all of his confidence, this totally won't end in tragedy, right? But all of this is for later, and we're still in the now. And right now, the white base was spotted by Zeon scouts making a break for the Pacific coast. This was Garma's moment. He expected this, so he prepared a trap. All that needs to be done now is to spring it. And with someone as good as Char riding shotgun, there's no way this could go wrong. The stage is set for Garma's triumph. He deploys with triple the air force than the previous engagement. He knows what the white base can do and he's planned properly for this fight. Moreover, Char won't be on the reserve bench this time. This will be quick and easy. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the white base, they know perfectly well the shitstorm they're walking into. It's unlikely that they can get a lucky break and slip away like last time, so they're going to have to whip up a miracle or they're done for. Amuro for once takes the initiative and volunteers to send the Gundam out as a decoy to bait the Zeke forces away from the white base, but Bright shoots the idea down. The Gundam would have to fight its way back to the white base, and with so many enemies in the area, he's not sure Amuro could pull it off. The crew mull their options for a while when a search flare from the Zeon plane land nearby. Luckily, the white base isn't spotted, but the light reveals a nearby stadium, one big enough for the white base to hide inside. With little other reasonable options available, they go through with a crazy plan. The ship's complement of mobile suits is also to be placed on standby just in case. Meanwhile, in the middle of this whole exchange, Amuro notes that Bright no longer considers him, or any of the other quote-unquote volunteers, to be, well, civilians anymore. Now, Amuro, he doesn't actually think himself to be a soldier just yet, but Bright does. And this kind of rubs Amuro the wrong way a bit. Back to the whole ordeal, the white base manages to settle inside the stadium just in time for another flare to land dangerously close to their location. The warship staying hidden despite their search efforts frustrates Garma, but Char, ever the sly one, has a plan. And this plan is actually quite simple for someone of Char's caliber. Basically, he wants to carpet bomb the ruins and smoke the ship out of its hiding hole. And you know what? This is actually a pretty good plan, so Garma gets on it. He orders the airships to unload their bombs and to flatten whatever's left of the city. Meanwhile, a brief cut to Garma's girlfriend. She's having a bit of a moment where she's trying to board a plane so that she can join her lover. She blows up on her father about how controlling he is and how he has no right to curtail her freedom. The father's response? Just smack her across the face. Well, back to Garma, he's becoming increasingly frustrated. The carpet bombing did jack all to smoke out the white base. He seriously considers deploying in his fighter again to personally lead the search, but Char stops him. Garma isn't just the commander of this operation, he's also the commander of the North American front, and he's also the youngest son of the Zabi family. The Gundam nearly got Garma the last time, and if he goes out now, there's every chance that the Feddies can finish what they started. Char offers to go instead. He is the subordinate after all, and his experience in mobile suit combat and fighting the Gundam means there's nobody else better suited to rooting out the white base. He then adds that Garma's letting his feelings get in his way, that he shouldn't rush the operation just to get back with his girlfriend. Now Garma's a bit miffed by this, but he relents, so Char departs with his team of Zakus, a development that the white base crew notices. Now Bright knows that Char is looking for the white base, so the Fedi officers devise a plan to get rid of him quickly. Amuro is to bait Char right into a kill zone where the white base can focus fire and take out the mobile suit. So the Gundam is deployed and it's a 3-on-1 engagement. Amuro gets caught by Char as the kid tries to sneak up on the other Zakus. And during this time, Char notes that Amuro is getting trickier now. He's using the environment to his advantage, and he baits Char's men away. The Red Comet himself though? Oh, he's smarter than that. He sees right through the ploy and runs the opposite direction that Amuro is going, leading him straight to the white base. Char reports the position of the white base, but what's this? He told Garma that the Gundam is retreating towards the white base when it is very clearly trying to lure the Zeke forces away. Garma, of course, he doesn't know this. He believes his friend, after all. There's no reason to think Char, his longtime buddy and confidant from the military academy, would ever lie to him. So Garma orders his air force to tail the Gundam, confident that the white mobile suit would lead him back to the warship. But what happens instead is that they've flown right into the warship's kill zone, with their backs to the enemy. The footage of Garma's Air Force getting annihilated is unfortunately not as exciting as the events it's portraying. Half of it is a few stills of exploding aircraft with tracers in the foreground and sound effects in the background. Now, it is an old anime film from the early 80s, so really I should let this pass, but I gotta be honest, this isn't exactly the most exciting scene. What is definitely exciting though is what happens afterward. Garma orders his warship to turn about and ram into the white base. If he's going down, he's taking the damned Feddies with him, honor and all that shit. But then the big twist happens.
Garma, 聞こえていたら君の生まれの不幸を呪うがいい。
何？不幸だと？
そう、不幸だ。
さあ、お前は？
君はいい友人であったが、君の父上がいけないのだよ。
Char reveals his true colors. Though he really liked Garma as a friend, he reveals that his hatred of the Zabis, one that he's been hiding for a very long time, supersedes his friendship. Betrayed by the man he thought was his closest friend, all Garma has left is this final chance to prove himself a man. He personally pilots the warship towards the white base, but alas, the damage is too much. The airship explodes before it can ram the Feddy warship, and Garma's last thoughts was the woman he was willing to leave this all to be with. Speaking of said woman, we cut to the ex-mayor's house, where it's shown that he was informed of Garma's untimely demise. The son of a bitch coldly tells his daughter that her lover is dead and thinks nothing more of it. It's a somber and tragic end to a character that I actually really like. Garma was an antagonist. Yes, he was a part of the cruel Zabi family and a commander of the Zeke forces invading the Earth. Yes, he was also dead set on destroying the Gundam and killing our main hero. Yes, but he wasn't an irredeemable asshole. In the little screen time we get with him, we see his passions, his dreams, the things that drive him. We see that even though he's the enemy of our main characters, he's still human. All of you, take note. We've had two major Zeke antagonists so far, and they're both three-dimensional characters with interesting things going on with them in the background. Char has the air of mystery surrounding him. He's Zeon's best attack dog, but he's also got an agenda of his own. Garma, on the other hand, was a nice guy born into the wrong family, stuck trying to live up to the expectations of his harsher and more callous siblings. This is what Gundam is like when it's firing on all cylinders. Fantastic stories about fantastic characters. It's just a shame that it got off to such a rough start on its original TV run. News of Garma's death arrived late in the Zeon fatherland. The Zabi patriarch, Degwin, was in grief over the loss of his youngest son and ordered all his children to gather. Here's where we're properly introduced to the other Zabis: Giren, the cutthroat and slimy politician, Kaiselia, the spy master, and Dozel, who is the quintessential soldier. Their interactions and introductions perfectly encapsulate the kind of characters they are. The first we ever hear from Giren, he's trying to convince his father to spin Garma's death to rally Zeon war morale. We've seen a bit of Dozel before, but here he's fleshed out more. The big guy's the most vocal about his grief. He can't believe that his little brother was killed in action. He cared about Garma immensely and wanted the youngest Zabi to eventually surpass himself. Kaiselia, on the other hand, stays quiet, observing the scene and only commenting on things as necessary. Degwin himself, though? He just wants a moment of silence for his youngest son. One that's never coming back to him, ever again. After all the hectic shit they've gone through, the White Base and its crew has finally gotten some time to rest, so you know what that means.
We're going to the beach! It's the beach episode!
Amuro has other plans though. His family lived in the California region before his parents separated. Considering everything that's happened, this opportunity might never come again, so he gets permission to take a core fighter and visit his mother. Cut to a little town, we see that Amuro's found his childhood home, but is horrified to see that drunk Feddy soldiers have taken it over, and that his mother is nowhere in sight. Amuro barges in on the party, and a soldier gets up as if to beat him, but he is stopped. One of the more reasonable soldiers tell Amuro that the house was already vacant by the time they arrived in town, meaning that Amuro's mother wasn't there. The kid moves to leave the house as the drunk soldiers berate him, but before Amuro exits, he spots one of his old toys still on the shelf, totally untouched. It's been there for years since the time his parents separated. Reminded of that moment, he runs out, frustrated. But then he sees one of his old neighbors in the middle of an argument with one of the Federation soldiers currently on duty. Still caught up in his emotions, Amuro picks a fight with the Feddy troopers, but he gets his ass beat. Fortunately, he did get the soldiers to lay off the old neighbor, and the two catch up for a while. In their conversation, it's revealed that the town got pretty hard in the fighting. A lot of people died, including one of Amuro's childhood friends. Just as things seem bleak, the neighbor then asks Amuro if he's already visited his mother. As it turns out, she survived the fighting and is now living in a refugee camp nearby. Amuro is ecstatic to hear this and he rushes to get to his mother. Back at the White Base, enemy air patrol is detected on the long-range sensors. Ryu is deployed with the other core fighter to intercept. Don't worry, this'll tie into the whole deal with Amuro later. Back with the kid, he arrives at the refugee camp with his core fighter, which predictably causes a commotion. He reunites with his mother and it's a genuinely heartfelt scene.
Amuro! 母さん。Amuro! 母さん！ Amuro! 母さん！
Consider the amount of shit and stress he's gone through since Side 7. His father went missing, presumably dead. His home was torn apart, most of his neighbors killed. Then to top it all off, now he has to fight and kill just to survive. Throughout the entire ordeal, he's had to deal with callous officers, constant slacking from his comrades, and the constant fear of death looming over his head. Now though, he's finally met his mother after many years. Someone who's going to hug him and comfort him and tell him everything's alright. They're going to have to continue their reunion inside though. The other refugees are worried that the Zeeks from a nearby base will punish the camp for harboring a Fedi soldier. The two catch up off screen, with Amuro describing everything that's happened over the past few weeks? Few days? The movie doesn't say. What the movie does say is that Zeon scouts have spotted Amuro's core fighter in the air and tracked it back to their refugee camp. They've arrived to investigate, so Amuro's mother hides him under the bedsheet, pretending that he's just another sick refugee. Back with Ryu and the other core fighter, he's managed to take out all but one of the Zeon air patrols. Unfortunately, his plane took a critical hit and can't continue the engagement. The last Zeon scout plane is fleeing southwest, towards Amuro's position, putting him in a prime position to intercept with the core fighter that he took. So Bright orders Sayla to hail Amuro, but the timing couldn't be worse. Amuro receives the call right as the Zeke scouts search the building he's hiding in, alerting them. His mother tries to convince them that it's nothing, telling them that her son is no threat, but they aren't budging. Just as he's about to be discovered by the Zeeks, Amuro makes the first move.
怪我をしてるんです。
怪しいのでなければ見せろ。うわっ
Amuro! 待ちなさい! Amuro! Amuro!
During this lightning-fast event, his mother tried to stop him. She's horrified that her son, the baby boy that's only returned to her life now after many years of estrangement, has somehow grown up to be a killer. This isn't to say Amuro was happy about the experience either. His hands are shaking. The adrenaline is still pumping through his veins. He's killed people before, sure, but this is different. Blowing up tanks, planes, and mobile suits, that wasn't personal. You see the machines explode, but you never see the fear in their eyes as they die. You don't see them breathe their last breath. This shook Amuro. Things didn't get better when his mother accosts him, outright shaming him for taking a man's life. If he was shaken before, now he was upset. He didn't kill Zeeks because he wanted to. He fought them because he had to, because otherwise his friends, his family, himself would already be dead. His mother was shaming him for protecting her, and that broke something inside him. This was supposed to be a happy moment. A mother and her son reuniting. That's supposed to be a moment filled with joy, and instead whatever relationship they had left was utterly destroyed. Another victim of this dreadful war. Amuro leaves the camp with the core fighter and intercepts the Zeon scout plane, only to run into the Zeke base on the other side of the mountain. The base commander sees this and scrambles his fighters to take down the core fighter, catching Amuro in a dogfight. As if things couldn't get any messier, two Fedi supply planes, under Lieutenant Mathilda's command, got caught up in the fighting, causing one of them to crash. They eventually pull out of the furball and split up as to not draw too much undue attention from any other Zeke forces in the area. Before they do regroup, Amuro's mother visits the White base, giving him back the toy he left at the camp. She asks if Amuro would like to stay, to leave the dreadful war behind, but he answers that even though he'd like to, he's sure he can't. The people on the ship are counting on him, and it'd probably feel wrong to just abandon them now. Bright then pops in on the conversation, telling Amuro's mother that her son is the sole reason why the White base even has a fighting chance, outright praising his skills as exemplary. Surprisingly enough, Bright actually asks Amuro what he would do, suggesting that he was actually willing to let the kid stop fighting and stay with his mother. What happens next is sad, to say the least.
これからもお達者でお母さん。
失礼いたします。お子様をお預かりします。
She had well and truly lost her son forever. Later that night, the White base rendezvous with Lieutenant Matilda's supply plane. As repairs are being done, Bright asks her why the hell Fedi High Command hasn't relieved them and sent a more capable crew to command the warship. She replies that, with each engagement, the White base is proving to be more and more effective in combat to the point that High Command even gave Bright a promotion over his actions, which is something that he's only being told now, of all times. As a follow-up to her answer, she then asks Bright if he's ever heard of new types before, which he answers no, so she explains that Zeon is looking into the subject as well, and that the Zeeks think that types are extremely talented people with incredible intuition and can pick up on things very quickly. Bright scoffs at the idea. If new types were real, and if the Fedis had any of them, then they'd have made short work of the Zeeks long before the war had gotten to this point. Bright was interrupted from his train of thought when he spots Amuro lurking nearby, probably wanting to see Lieutenant Matilda again. He basically tells the kid to fuck off and go to bed. Matilda then advises Amuro to get a good long rest, that pilots have to rest too, otherwise they can't fight properly, and he seems to be more receptive to her words. On his way back to his room, Amuro meets Frau, who is sulking right outside his door. She asks where he went, but he dodges the question. When he asks why she asks, Amuro just looks away and says, "Nothing's the matter," leaving him alone. Amuro's confused. He doesn't understand girls. Which is understandable and relatable. If you've lived your life mostly as a shut-in, constantly tinkering with machines over having fun with your friends, yeah, you'd probably be bad with women too. Early next morning, Lieutenant Matilda's supply plane leaves, and Amuro runs to the bridge in time to see it depart. As the Fedi group part ways, Bright briefs Amuro on their new orders. The White base is to make its way towards Europe, where they're going to assist in a major offensive to retake Odessa. Cut to the Zeon homeland, Degwin Zabi is late to Garma's funeral ceremony. He's still in his room listening to his youngest son's last message to him on repeat. In his final words to his father, Garma says he wants to make his father proud. He wants to become someone the entire Principality of Zeon could be proud of. Someone who earns the respect he wants, not merely have it given to him on a silver platter. It isn't until Caecilia comes into the room, with what seems to be grief and concern in her eyes, that she reminds her father that he still has a role to play as the head of Zeon. With Degwin's entry into the funeral ceremony, the attending crowd starts chanting the Zabi name. Cut now to an entirely new Zeon warship cruising through the Earth's atmosphere. Commanding the ship is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Ramba. One of, if not the best written Zeon-aligned characters in the Universal Century timeline, especially in the one-year war setting. He is a legend and stands head and shoulders above a lot of other Zeon characters with just how likable he is. He's a professional soldier who isn't an asshole and is actually more than a decent guy. He'll be a highlight in the next movie as his appearance here is merely his introduction. The warship he is currently commanding, the Zanzibar, happens to cross paths with the White Base. He calculates his chances in an engagement. After thinking it through, he decides to go on the attack. He was ordered by Dozelzabi himself to hunt down the White Base and to avenge Garma's death. And defying Dozelzabi is not something you take lightly. Back with the White Base, Amuro is busy running repairs on one of the Gundam's components. He's running himself ragged, but Fra doesn't comment on it. He'd just lash out otherwise, so she brings him food and leaves. As it turns out, Amuro is throwing himself at his work to distract himself from the developments of the past few days. His mother shaming him for being a soldier, gunning down a man, all that shit. Now to the Zeon homeland again. Garma's funeral is proceeding as scheduled. In the middle of this, Kycilia asks Dozel where Char is. After all, he had survived when Garma didn't. As spy master for the Principality, she'd like to know what exactly happened. When Dozel wouldn't answer, she tasks one of her spies to go find him. We return to the White Base and the Zanzibar, who have now engaged in combat. As the two warships maneuvered, they run into a storm. A real storm. Not like the artificial ones in the colonies, but a natural one, outside of the control of man. Both warships, crewed by many space noids who have never been to Earth before, somewhat panic at the sight of lightning. A Zeon sailor even suggests that this must be the work of the Federation warship. Ramba knows better though. Like the Giga Chad he is, he tells his soldiers that this is entirely natural and that they should remain calm. Over at the White Base, Bright and the crew attempt to lose the Zanzibar by hiding themselves in one of the nearby islands. With the storm being so intense, they have a very real chance to shake the Zeke warship off their tail. Once landed, they deploy their mobile suit complement, just in case the Zanzibar finds them, and deploys the Zaku complement that they no doubt have. Ryu rushes down to get the suit pilots ready, and finds Amuro still in his room, blanket wrapped around him, frozen in a 1,000-yard stare. The kid almost seems dazed, but Ryu doesn't have time for this. He violently shakes Amuro back to his senses, almost beating up the kid, but thankfully we won't have a repeat of what Bright did. Amuro says that there's no need to hit him and that he'll go pilot the Gundam. Outside, one of the smaller Zeon ships spot the White Base, signaling the Zanzibar to its location. The warships prepare to deploy their mobile suits, and the stark contrast between the two couldn't be more different. Amuro is dazed. It's like he's not even there. It seems like all the stress and excitement of the few days, in addition to his broken relationship with his mother, has somewhat crushed his resolve. Hell, the guy has to be led down the hall by Ryu. It's obvious to anyone that he's not in any state to fight, but there's nobody else to pilot the Gundam. Bright orders the kid to launch anyways, hoping that the adrenaline of combat will jolt him back into the action. On the other hand, Ramba eagerly suits up. He even gets lots of encouragement from his lover, who says that mobile suits and direct engagements is a much better fit for the man than yelling in a warship's bridge. He deploys confidently, sure of his abilities and that this new Zeke suit will keep him alive. The Gundam and the new Zeke suit engage in close combat, with Amuro having to shake himself out of his daze right after he stumbled into the enemy. He makes chase to the Zeeks, cresting the hill only to find that the Zeke MS team had been waiting at the bottom, opening fire with a vicious coordinated volley. One of the Zakus throw a grenade and Amuro has to jump off the hill to avoid getting caught in the blast. What he wasn't expecting is for the blue enemy mobile suit to chase him down and launch a whip-like weapon which wraps around the Gundam's bazooka. A powerful electric current hits the bazooka, causing Amuro to let go of it and disarming the Gundam. The gun cannon and the gun tank finally join the fight, but they're disorganized. They're trying to give the Gundam some covering fire, but to no avail. The Gundam and the new Zeke suit engage in CQC, with Ramba actually getting the upper hand. As the man tries to land the finishing blow, Amuro makes a wild move, charging right into the Zeke's face and punching the mobile suit in the gut. Then the kid tries to draw his beam saber to finish the job, but to his absolute shock and horror, the Zeke mobile suit was fast enough to stop the Gundam dead in its track. That trick might have worked on a Zaku, but this mobile suit right here? Yeah, this ain't no Zaku, boy. No Zaku. The gun cannon and the gun tank push in and drives off the Zeke mobile suits with overwhelming firepower, causing Raul to call a withdrawal. The Zanzibar closes in to provide fire support, then extracts the 3 Zeke mobile suit. The Zeke warship then fires off an intense blast of light, blinding the Fedi forces on the island and letting it leave the battlefield. After heading to the White Base, Amuro and Ryu head over to the bridge to report to Bright, but they find that Garma's funeral was being played on the big screen. Bright tells Amuro to pay attention, and the movie now focuses on Giran, who is using his dead brother's funeral to rally Zeon to keep fighting the Federation. The perspective cuts around a bit, between the white base to the Zanzibar, and then to a bar, where Char scoffs at the speech. The speech is now out of focus as a man confronts the Red Comet. Char, smart as ever, correctly deduces that the man was actually one of Kaecilia's spies. Cut back to Giran's speech, and he asks the people of Zeon to keep stoking their hate of the Federation, saying that with their combined hatred they can truly smash the Federation and live free lives. He even starts spouting off supremacist rhetoric, saying that the people of Zeon are the chosen one, that they are the ones who will bring humanity to a new era, a superior breed of man that stands over the rest. And then, as if the allegories to Austrian Mustache Man weren't enough, Giran then ends the speech by chanting, "Sieg Zeon." The reactions of the white base crew are quite telling of the people. Mirai and Amuro are concerned at the fanatical zeal of the enemy they face. Sayla seems quite distraught at first, and then sad. Bright's reaction is as fiery and temperamental as one can expect from him. The man basically gets up on his seat and starts calling Giran a lying sack of shit. The movie then follows the white base as it continues its arduous journey towards Odessa, with Zeon chanting slowly fading away, ending the movie in a somewhat somber tone. And damn, what a movie that was. There's a lot to be said about the original Gundam. It might have been messy visually, and the story might not be told in the most subtle way, but few can deny that the narrative it tells is a great one. It takes the popular trope of young boy chosen by destiny to pilot a giant robot and kick evil ass, and kind of turns it all on its head. Like, it's true that the Zabis and Zeon are pretty much the bad guys with how brutally their leaders persecuted the war, but at the same time they're not two-dimensional mustache-twirling bad guys. Garma and Ramba are a living testament that there's always nice people caught up on the other side of the war. On the other hand, the Fedis aren't good guys either. Their oppression directly led to the war, and we meet more than a handful of dicks in their ranks. And yet it's hard to disagree that they're kind of the lesser of two evils. The characters, as I've read before, are written fairly realistically, and if you've been paying attention, I'm sure you understand why. I don't think there's a single decision made by a character in this movie that I thought didn't make sense. For example, Bright was kind of a dick to Amuro, but remember that he's got the weight of the entire war effort riding on his back. Even if you frown on his actions, you can kind of understand why he did it. Amuro himself, as the main character, is really good. In this movie alone, he goes through such a character arc. From a whiny, cowardly boy to someone who genuinely wants to help protect his friends, to the point where he's pushing himself to the limit. He still has a lot to go through, and his arc is nowhere near finished. Not even by the time of the third movie. He gets more character development in Zeta, where he grows up to his ultimate form in Char's counterattack, but that's for later. First, I gotta finish working on this monster of a video. It's definitely gonna be my longest so far. And if this is how long it's going to take me to finish a 2-hour movie, I'm not sure how long it'll take for me to cover Zeta and the other shows. Oh well, that's a bridge I'll have to cross when I get there. If you've gotten this far into the video, thank you. Genuinely, thank you. I have no clue why the hell you're still here, but thank you nonetheless. I'm actually in the middle of transitioning my channel from commentary to long-form reviews. I've got 2 other reviews already uploaded, so if you like that stuff, do check them out. The links to them should be in the video description, unless Future Teams did an oopsie and forgot to put it there. Either ways, do watch them and stick around, cause I've got a lot more up the pipeline, talking about other games, movies, shows, comics, anime, what have you that I find interesting. Anyways, that's about it for this video. This has been Teams of Regret, wishing you all good luck and Godspeed. Signing out.